Well, hello and welcome to this episode of the Fertility Rewire podcast. It's been a couple of weeks again, hasn't it? And I'm truly sorry for that. I've actually had a mild concussion, which was scary at times. And I went through huge personality changes along the way, some good, some not so good. But here I am, and what it has taught me, and it's interesting when I'm working with clients and we look at what's stopping you doing this, what's preventing you. It's about making plans. And I now have a wonderful team working with me. I have somebody keeping me on track, and I have somebody editing my podcasts and uploading them. So it's freeing more time for me. So that's exciting. So hopefully we're going to be more consistent with this and you will have me regularly again. So in this episode, I am going to talk about the 2-week wait. Now, the 2-week wait, what is the 2-week wait? I am sure those of you on a fertility journey will be very aware of this term. It's generally a term that is given to the period of time from ovulation to the end of your cycle, where you are waiting to see if you're pregnant. It's also a term used during the time after embryo transfer in IVF or ICSI to the time that you can do your test. But as you will know on your fertility journey, you are waiting throughout the whole cycle. You are waiting for your bleed to finish. You are waiting for ovulation to come, and you are waiting to see what happens after ovulation. So it's not really specific to that time, although generally when you Google the 2-week wait, that's what you're going to come up with. One thing I want to talk about as well is the fact that this 2 weeks might be a little bit of a misnomer. So I've talked before, haven't I, about the holy grail of a 28-day cycle, that you may ovulate, you will start your bleed and then you might ovulate on day 14 and your cycle may end on day 28. But actually that's not common for everyone. You might have a long follicular phase. From bleed to ovulation might be a long time, especially in polycystic ovary syndrome. Some clients with endometriosis, you might find, especially with this estrogen dominance, the ovulation is a little later. What's interesting is to really pinpoint when you're ovulating. Now, if you're using sticks, that might be adding to your pressure potentially. You might be misreading the information. So when you get the green light of go, the happy smiling face, actually, you might be too late by then. So it's really important that we're getting things ready for ovulation, and the sperm is waiting for the egg. And I've talked about this quite a while as well. So knowing your cycle is really, really key. So you know what your wait is and how long your wait is before you start. If you ovulate and the time from ovulation to the end of your cycle is less than 10 days, I think we can pretty much say it is incredibly unlikely that you would get pregnant with a cycle like that. With a short luteal phase or a luteal phase defect, it will be incredibly difficult to get pregnant. And when you know that implantation generally occurs between 8 to 9 days after ovulation, you can start to see why that is possible. And actually, it can occur in some people up to 12 days after ovulation. The egg is released, it lasts for 24 hours. It depends when in that window it is fertilized. It then travels down the fallopian tube and into the uterus, and that is where implantation occurs. So that time frame, that 2 weeks, is really key. If it's less than 2 weeks for you, then we need to be looking into lengthening the luteal phase. It might be that we're shortening the follicular phase, and that could be through methods of hormonal balance without medication, and some self-care and some actions that you can take to support this balance within the cycle. So before we even get into the 2-week wait, I wanted you to understand that I know you're waiting for more than 2 weeks and you've got separate waits going on. But I really wanted you to know that understanding the length of time and the signs your body is giving you can give you a lot more information that will arm you with a sense of control. Okay. So I Googled how to survive the 2-week wait. And generally, I'll go through with you the advice that you will find, and we'll have a little looky-see into that and pick that apart a little bit. So keep busy is the first one. So it's kind of saying keep busy and then you won't think about it almost, don't sit and ruminate on it or whatever. But is keeping busy, I mean, for some people, for sure, keeping busy takes your mind off things. It stops you obsessing, which is another thing that you're advised to do in this week. So keeping busy, what are you going to keep yourself busy with? Because there's a difference between keeping busy and avoidance, isn't there? So let's have a think about that. Are you keeping busy by keeping your diary full? Because that may help you. Just think on with this. If keeping busy helps you, that's great. If keeping busy is an action that you think might help you, but actually it's the type of busy that is wrong. So maybe not going to lots of social events is better for you than going. So my advice is that you can say no. So when you're invited to things, and particularly if you're invited to things that are potentially triggering, like baby showers and so on, I would urge you to kind of sit into that feeling and perhaps, allow yourself to say no, to protect yourself. I mentioned stop obsessing. So stop obsessing about pregnancy symptoms. So are your breasts sore? Is there any tingling in your tummy? Are you feeling sick? Has your appetite changed? Are you bloated? How can you not be looking for these? How can you not be looking for these? And when I'm working with my clients, we work on the what if. What if this means I'm pregnant? What if I am pregnant? What if I'm not pregnant? They're the thoughts that clients have, and we work with coming away from the what if, and we look at how things are. So it's sorry, I got to say, it's about thinking, it's a very British thing to not get one's hopes up, to kind of stay in the negative and not allow oneself to get one's hopes up. And that's something that, I work with an awful lot with the clients that I'm working with. You're also told in the advice about surviving the 2-week wait to step away from Google. Now, stepping away from Google is something that I work with my clients with a lot, but it's just the right, stepping away from the wrong sources. Okay, so be aware that if you go into a forum, a fertility forum, that may be a great area of support, but it's also people's views and people's opinions, and they are not necessarily people who have expertise in fertility, but they have their own experience. And as you know, we are all so incredibly different, and there are so many variables within everybody's fertility story, so many nuances within your body, so many differences. You two different partners, your male and female are involved, so you're increasing the variables even further in that sense. So choose what you look at wisely. Look at credited sources of information, not forums necessarily. That's my main advice. But if a forum gives you great support, if a forum gives you great encouragement, then that's fantastic. It has to be, I'm not dissing forums here, I don't want it to sound like that. It has to work for you. And it's about putting yourself in situations that are supportive. One of the things to think about in terms of that is that, and you're exposed to this all over social media. Jane did this and she got pregnant. Jane took this herb and she got pregnant. But Jane's hormonal imbalance is very, very different potentially to yours. And if you follow what Jane did, that might negatively impact your fertility journey. It might not help. We need to look at things in terms of that difference to people. I have clients that have, as I'm sure many of you have tried everything, have seen that somebody on Instagram has tried this herb and they've tried that, or read that somebody took magnesium and that helped, or somebody had acupuncture and that helped. And, it may well, but we have to come back again and again, what I talk about all the time, to being a fertility detective and finding out why there may be an imbalance, finding out what that imbalance is, what signs your body is giving you, and speaking to somebody who is an expert in this field and understands about fertility, mind and body on a much wider scale. One of the other advices is don't test too early. Now, what is too early? Again, you've got to look at your cycle and when you ovulate. And if we're thinking that implantation might not happen up to, 12 days after ovulation, in some people, obviously that varies depending on your cycle. And when you really get to know your cycle, then you will start to understand that. So what is too early? Well, 10 days will be too early. But if you normally start your period 14 days after you ovulate, then day 14 is not too early, in my opinion. Now, this gets very complicated, both physically and emotionally here. So I encourage my clients to test the day after their period is expected if they have a regular period. Otherwise, we go on charts and we work with their luteal phase, and I will say, well, perhaps you could test now. Now, we work on what those expectations of that test are, how we're going to feel after the test, to prepare somebody emotionally. But from a physical point of view, the reason I support testing when your period is a day late, maybe 2 days late, is if you have a very, very early miscarriage, you will, and I know this is a sad thing to think about, but you will know that. You will know that because you will have done a pregnancy test. If it is positive, if you then miscarry or you get your period, you might have thought it was just a late period, but this will let you know whether it was a miscarriage or not. And this is very clinical, I know, but if you have, in the UK, you cannot be investigated for miscarriages until you have had 3. Now, I'm working with lots of clients that when we look at their history, I do believe they've had more miscarriages, that they've had early miscarriages, or what's often referred to quite cruelly, actually, as a chemical pregnancy. So, but that we have to go with how that will affect you emotionally, as I've said. So, it will be devastating. It will be devastating. For some women, actually doing the pregnancy test and getting it out of the way means that the anticipation and the stopping and the waiting and the wondering can change. So we have to work, both physically, what's right. You don't have to do an early test if it's not right for you emotionally, but we work on that emotion of that testing process. So the other advice that you see on the 2-week wait is it's good to talk. Now, who are you going to talk to? Because chances are, not the same for everybody, but chances are you've not shared this with people. It's not an easy conversation. It's not a conversation you've shared with many people. And maybe your relationship with your partner is great and that you are able to talk about that together, or maybe that wouldn't be helpful. So who are you going to talk to? And some sites suggest that you talk to other people going through fertility. And for some people, that is great. For others, actually, you want to talk to someone that hasn't got their own story on this. You just want to talk to someone perhaps who will listen, someone who perhaps won't offer platitudes and tell you that your time will come and just got to keep on trying, So you've got to find that person. Now, I think I talked about this when I talked about and shared with you about my miscarriage that I had with my first pregnancy. I hadn't told anybody that I was pregnant, and I was away far from home in another part of the UK, and I phoned a friend who lived nearby and had to tell her that I thought I was having a miscarriage. And it was really hard because she was kind of being told I'm pregnant, I'm not pregnant, all in the same bit. Whereas when I got pregnant for the second time, I told a core group of friends because I wanted to be prepared. Okay. Now, it's the same with fertility. Is there someone that you can talk to about it, that you can open up to, that will be the listener? I know for my clients, that person is me. And within the group program, the Conceivable group program, people will be able to get that support as they wish to talk to other people. So I think what I'm trying to say is I'm not dissing all the advice here, but I'm just saying it just depends on what's going on for you, and you need to find out what's right for you. The other thing that is suggested is that you undertake relaxation techniques, which is kind of like telling you to just relax. And we know that just relaxing isn't actually an easy thing to do. It's like me talking continually, potentially about a pink elephant, and then tell you not to think about pink elephants, or telling you in the height of a crisis, with wild animals around you, don't think about wild animals, just relax. There's nothing to worry about here. So yes, relaxation techniques are fantastic, and it's something I teach. It's something that's part of my program as well. And there's lots of free resources out there. You could look at mindfulness. You could look at guided self-hypnosis. There's lots available on YouTube. You can think about getting this in place. So it's not something that you're just going to do in the 2-week wait. It becomes a part of your life, actually, that these relaxation techniques and finding a technique that works for you. Within the work that I do with my clients, we look at tiger taming. So we're looking much more broadly. It's not just about the 2-week wait. It's just generally about reducing the stress response and the fear response in the body, and how you react to thoughts. And especially at this 2-week wait, it's how you respond to the what ifs. So it's not about being negative or positive. You can actually get to the point with some aspects, gosh, not all, but with some aspects where there's a level of neutrality. But what we move towards is a level of acceptance. Now, this can get a little bit confused. It's not accepting that this is the way it is. It's not accepting that this isn't going to happen. It's accepting that this is how you feel now. And that is okay. It's okay to feel really crappy. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be fearful. That is how you are feeling. And the energy it takes you to try and push that feeling away, because you should feel another way, is it takes so much energy to do. So here is this feeling. This feeling is here. And we look at ways that we learn to be in that feeling, in that moment, rather than the future tripping that I've talked about in a previous episode, where you're doing the what if. And if I don't get pregnant this month, then that will mean that, and then that will mean that, and then that will mean that. So I think you need to validate what you are feeling. And I've talked about this before, where we recognize our thoughts. There's a story that you are telling yourself, that you are narrating that story. And it's about not really taking control, but being aware of that story that you're telling yourself, and maybe changing the narrative. Not just thinking positively, gosh, no, please, no, not just thinking positively, but just working at a deeper level to change that narrative. And I think what I really need to get across, which I hope I've got across, is that there isn't one rule for everybody. Just like there isn't one fertility journey that's the same for everyone. There are similarities, of course. And one of the big similarities is the emotional impact, the effect on your sex life, the effect on your relationship, but different nuances within it, absolutely. And probably one of the biggest causes of fertility issues that I see is a short luteal phase. And we do have to dig deeper into that. What's causing the estrogen dominance? How can we work on balancing this cycle? How can we physically prepare you for a fertility journey going forward? And how emotionally can we prepare you as well? So the program that I work with clients, I've renamed. So it is Fertility Rewire, and that is my podcast, and that is my website. But my group program that I mentioned before is called Conceivable. And that is where a group of women, small groups of women in the program, can receive information, can work with me and work with the groups as little, people in the group as little or as much as they want to. It's a supportive place. Whilst, yes, people will be sharing similar experiences and be on a similar path, we really will not ever lose sight of those nuances and differences between individuals. And I think what I want to really get across is that you can be in control, and you can have more of a feeling of being in control in this 2-week wait. If you have done what you can do to understand your cycle, you know what's happening in your cycle, that you do truly know when you ovulate. If you have taken steps to improve your egg health quality and your sperm health quality, well, your partner's or your sperm health quality, you've taken steps to look into your pelvic health. You've taken steps to reduce the emotional impact that's going on. You can start to have a sense of control. Being in control and having a sense of control are very, very different. So to arm yourself for your 2-week wait or your 4-week wait divided into different sections or more, it's about having knowledge. It's about having knowledge, because knowledge is power, and information is always going to make things easier. Now, part of the fertility journey is that you are lacking information and that you have no answers. So becoming a fertility detective on a gentle, informed basis, not necessarily following what Jane has done, seeing what is right for you, can give you a sense of control. Starting to look at these emotional factors in your life. So are you spinning out? Are you future tripping? Are you catastrophizing? What emotional support can we give to bring that level down? Because, of course, we want the cortisol down, we want the adrenaline down. We know that, but we can't just relax. So think about relaxation techniques. Think about methods I've talked about, and I'm sure in the tiger taming episode, I talked about the power of an out breath. Now, when we are anxious and we take deep breaths, what we tend to do is we breathe in, and it's this kind of like drawing in, which is lifting, lifting, lifting. What we want to do is to shorten the in-breath away from that gasp and draw to a very gentle in-breath, and then a long and slow out-breath. Okay, so you breathe in and out. Do that just for a few moments. I did this exercise when I did the mirror workshop on reducing stress when trying to conceive, which is on YouTube if you want to look that up. I will find the link and put it in the show notes. So you do a short breath in, and then I'm actually recording a video with this episode as a new thing moving forward. So that will be on YouTube, so you can watch me doing the exercise. Short breath in, and then out. Long and slow. And that long, slow out breath is resetting, it's calming, and it's what your body does naturally in recovery. When you're in anxiety, when you're in trauma, when you're in fear, it's all in, holding in and holding your breath, and fear and worry. And when the danger has passed, you sigh. Thank heavens. The long, slow out breath is your recovery. So that is a relaxation technique that you can start to put in place daily, maybe a few times a day, just to teach yourself that long, slow out breath. And then do it with your partner. And when your partner sees you being anxious, then this is a tricky one, I get that. He's not going to tell you to just relax. And actually, the mirror neurons in our brain, what's really, really powerful is if somebody does something, we find that easy to copy in the moment. So when my children have been doing school plays and things in the past, when they were little, I'd see their anxiety in them and they'd look across to me and I would just do a long, slow out breath. I would just blow and I would bring my hands down just to show that we're bringing down. So actually, just by somebody near you doing a long, slow out breath when you're tense, you may just join in with that. Now, obviously, I know within a relationship that if someone that could make you cross, but you know your relationship, and comes back to that support, doesn't it? Having someone you can talk to, whether that's me or a fertility therapist or a different sort of therapist, or whether that's a friend or a family member that will listen, not necessarily give advice, just listen and be there. I hope that's been helpful. I've just wanted to unpick it a little bit. My biggest take home is we are not all the same. You are not the same as Jane. What works for Jane doesn't necessarily work for you. And if you are armed with knowledge, gives you information, that leads to a sense of power and control. If you've got any questions, if you want to drop me a line, let me know how you deal with the 2-week wait. You can do so in comments, or you could drop me a line at kat@fertilityrewire.com. I'd love to hear how you deal with the 2-week wait, or perhaps some really frustrating advice that you've been given. It's been a pleasure talking to you. As ever, take care.